Moving on to your time now, then, just talk us through what you're up to, what you're doing at QPR, and how much this position means to you, because you've kind of been there now a sustained period of time, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been there 6 years now, and it's still a work in progress in trying to, I think we've stabilised the club now, and we know where we are in terms of what we can spend, what we can do, and there's budgets around, and we're just trying to establish the side with some younger players, and that takes a bit of time to establish those players that they can go and kick on and hopefully get ourselves back in a position where we're challenging up the top end of the league rather than where we are at the moment at the bottom half.
First of all, before I get onto some of the players that you've got and that you've had in the past, have you enjoyed the role? Are you enjoying the role, even should I say, that you're in now? Because it's not really a role that you kind of see, is it, in some of the lower leagues of English sport? It's normally you associate a technical director with the big European giants, but someone like QPR, it's a real step forward. It's more of a forward-thinking step than it is anything else.
I think most of the clubs now in the Championship, if you speak to most clubs, quite a few of the clubs have the role. It's a role that's coming into football more and more. I mean, on the continent, and I've done some studies in Germany, and I've been on some courses and did studies around it, and the whole pretext to it is the reason for it in sort of like on the continent is because they're saying that managers change all the time, and if your football club doesn't have a philosophy or an idea of where it wants to go, you're always changing that philosophy for each manager that comes through the door, because he'll inevitably come through the door and want to change X amount of players, want to play a different way. So with my role and other technical directors' roles in the game, what you do is you, as a club, you identify how you want to play, what type of football you want to play, what the fans are used to seeing, and then you go and identify managers that you feel play that way, and hopefully all the rest of it kicks into place, and you're able to produce something that is competitive, which has continuity going forward. And at the time, where we was, it was always going to take quite a bit of time to get us to where we needed to be, and we're still in that process now. With the manager we got, Mark, people often talk to me about, you spoke there about the big European clubs. The one thing the big European clubs is they have lots of money to spend, so they can go and buy the best players. We have to do it in a more holistic way. The club spent a lot of money in the past, and we have to do it in a more holistic way now. So that means people out on the ground, bringing in the younger types of players. But then it's a struggle to keep them all together, because once one starts hitting the headlines, the bigger clubs come knocking, and it's hard to resist selling them when they're talking about the kinds of monies that we sold Eze for.
Well, that, believe it or not, that is exactly the person I wanted to speak to you about next. He came, I wouldn't say it was a flash in the pan. He was a person that was taking his time to get to where he got to, but boy, did he show what he was capable of then in that season last year before he ended up making that move to Crystal Palace. What a player, and what an individual he looks to be.
Yeah, he came through the door. He'd been at the club for about 4 years, so there was a lot of work that had gone into him from the academy, and Paul Hall, Andrew Impey, Chris Ramsey, they all sort of got him in. At times he looked like he was going to go out the door himself because he just wasn't adhering to what we wanted. But, those guys put an arm around him and said to him this, that and the other. We got him to a level where we felt his football was consistent. And then it was time to send him out on loan, which Gareth Ainsworth at Wickham took him. And, I went to watch him a couple of times and I was thinking, right, it looks like the pennies dropped with him. Came back to QPR. And I remember when he first came back from Wickham, he had a great spell where everybody was raving about him. And then that next season, he dipped a little bit, which is normal. No one's career just goes like that, ascends and keeps ascending. You have dips and troughs in that. And he had a bit of a dip where even the supporters were saying, we got to get rid of him. He's no good. And then he came again, and we knew he would, because he's got that ability, he's got that craft, he's got that determination. We knew he'd come again, and he did. And unfortunately, this time around, when he did come, we weren't able to keep hold of him because there was a mad scramble for his signature.
But I think that's down to the real testament of the characters that you've got within your staff as well, isn't it? I think Crystal Palace, I'm talking about, as a QPR even have a rich vein of form when it comes to producing youngsters that go on to either make a successful career at a club or have their own fantastic career. Someone like Raheem Sterling, who has come through the academy and gone on to have the career he has, it really shows the strength and depth within the academy levels and the youth team that are there at Queen's Park Rangers.
Yeah, and it's, QPR have always been a club. You go back to, we talk about Raheem. You go back to myself. Came out of non-league football and managed to get myself into the first team eventually, and go on to have a decent career. Trevor Sinclair, Andrew Impey, all these guys that came out of lower leagues. Andy Sinton, and to name but a few. Kevin Gallen, came through the system. So we've always had a good system in place. Unfortunately, in probably I say recent years now, before I came to the club, that system somewhat came to a halt because new owners had came in, they were splashing the cash, and then your academy doesn't get the attention that it deserves, especially when it had produced what it produced in the past. And we had to go back to basics, because we all get hyped up in the Premier League and what it is and what we have to do in it and the money that has to be spent. And sometimes, your academies get neglected. And that's not purely, I'm not putting out the blame of the owners of the football club, because I think as well, supporters, if you're not spending millions, you're not competing. So, I'm talking from experience and knowing that in the Premier League, you go to a Premier League club, and if a club goes out and says, because people often say to me, where's the next Jamie Vardy? That's the name that comes out because he's the recent one that's come out in non-league football and has had a glittering career. And people say, where's the next Jamie Vardy? And I say, well, the next Jamie Vardy didn't just come out of non-league football and was Jamie Vardy. If you look at the steps that he took to get to where he got to and how he got there, it didn't just happen overnight. But everyone wants Jamie Vardy coming out of non-league football to be the Jamie Vardy that's now. And it's just not feasible. So the demands were, you have to spend, if you're going to compete in the Premier League, you've got to be spending 20, 30, 40 million on a striker. That's just not feasible for us in the Championship. We have to go out and get, rugged diamonds and try and polish them up and make them better. Eze was a rugged diamond. We polished him, made him better, and he's gone on to Crystal Palace, made the club a lot of money. And we got a few more little gems in the team that we think will do that. But from my perspective, I'm a bit selfish, and I want to try and keep them together because we are trying to build that squad that will take us back to where we want to go. But it becomes increasingly hard.
Yeah, of course. And that's it. It's taking that diamond from the rough, as you say. And I think one of the beautiful things about the Football League as well is that you can send some of those younger lads who might not be ready for the first team action in a Sky Bet Championship club or a Premier League club, for example, and you can send them down to clubs in League Two and League One. You talked about Wickham there. Gareth Ainsworth has done some fantastic things over the years, recently getting the team into the Championship. But from your position as anybody that if you take a player out and put him with a manager of a certain caliber, someone who can put an arm around the shoulder, you might get the best out of him. And Gareth Ainsworth and Eze was that complete partnership in the end, wasn't it? For an age,
yeah, he went and had a good time. He had a good time with the manager, with the coaches, with the players that he was playing with, and that's important when you get out on loan. And sometimes players go out on loan and they get judged. Sometimes you get a player that comes out of QPR or he comes out of the Premier League and he goes down into the Championship, and they go, well, he's got to score 15 goals. You go, why? You're not seeing the surroundings that he's playing in. We always used to have the saying, I used to say to people, they used to go, well, he ain't done well, he ain't done it. I said, well, send Luka Modric there. Send Jermaine Defoe, send Pavlyuchenko there and see how they get on. Do you know what I mean? This is just about experiences. And when you go out on loan, it's to get your first kind of experiences of playing, in front of a crowd, where there's something on it. Because unfortunately, as good an intention they had for the under-23 league, it's not quite worked in this country, and the games have not been competitive enough. So you have to send the boys out on loan. So it's their first experience, and that what you want them to do is go and understand what it means to earn a living. In the 23s, you lose a game, it's not really that important. When someone's livelihood's at stake, someone's got to pay a mortgage, someone's got to pay whatever. It's a different environment. The changing room's a different environment then, and so that's why we send boys out on loan. Yeah, of course, we want them to be the best player they can be. We want them to be the best in that team if they can be. But that doesn't always happen. Doesn't mean they're not going to have a successful career.
And then the final question really is sticking with the Championship, is what a league it is. It's always that league that every year you look at it and you go, literally anybody from first down to like sometimes 23rd can probably go up, isn't it? It's that mad of a division. One week you could be leading away by 7 points, as Reading were at one stage of the season, and all of a sudden you have a few weeks of off form and you're down to 6th, 7th. It's just a mental division, isn't it?
You know, I saw, like, I was fortunate to play most of my career in the Premier League, and I had a 5-month spell at a 4-month spell at Reading at the end of my tenure in football. And at that time I was like, wow, this is very different to what I'd come out of. And, you know, I came out of it and then kind of went into doing some media work when I retired, and then coming back into it now. And over the last 6 years, I just cannot believe the competitive nature of it and the way you cannot predict a score. I know people talk about the Premier League and say, the one thing about the Premier League, you know, I always say to people is, the great thing about the Premier League is you could be winning a game in the 85th minute, and by the 92nd or 95th minute, you've lost it because no one gives up. But it's totally different in the Championships. You just can't predict who's going to beat, because the team, as you said, who's flying, all of a sudden gets beaten by the team at the bottom of the league, you know what I mean? And then they go on a run of losing 3 games and they're down in, you know, the bottom half of the table. So it has been a strangely competitive one, an enjoyable one to watch. And it's just a shame that there's no supporters in the stadium at the moment.